Welcome to episode 1357 of The Sleeper and the Bust. I am Justin Mason, joined as always on Sundays by Jason Collette. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing well. I'm honestly still trying to process the news of Ricky Henderson's passing yesterday.
Yeah.
It's 65. His birthday was supposed to be Christmas. That's his birthday. Ironically, I saw somebody post, maybe it was in the Sheehan Slack channel the other day. It's like we're only 4 days away from the birth of the greatest one, his birthday, and then like the next day. And then I saw something Rasball had posted. It's like a player could average 70 steals for 20 years and still not surpass what Ricky Henderson. They would steal 70 bases a year for 20 years and still not best Ricky Henderson. I mean, honestly, probably the greatest athlete. I mean, I know you say people say Bo Jackson, but go back and look at Henderson's. Like, this is probably arguably one of the top 3 athletes of our lifetime.
Yeah, it was pretty shocking when I heard the news yesterday.
Didn't think it was real.
Yeah,
honestly, at first I was like, "Huh, no."
The cool thing is just getting to hear all the stories over and over about Ricky and just how amazing of a player he was, but also just how funny of a character he was in real life. And so I've been enjoying listening to a lot of those stories and reading a lot of those stories. But yeah, 65. That's still pretty young or too young to lose a legend like that. But we had a lot of great memories with Ricky Henderson, and so if you're younger and you don't know all the stories of Ricky Henderson, I thoroughly implore you to go out and seek out some of these stories because they're quite amazing.
Everything, all of it is. It's just like even the whole thing about how he used to, like, he wanted to give everybody full shares every time it was around, like full share, like anyway, full share. And he's like, it's a life-changing. I'm trying to remain PG on the language, but F that, it's a life-changing. You're changing somebody's life, like full share. I just love that part about him.
Yeah, just a good dude. Today we are going to talk about a ton of moves we've had over the course of the last week. Some that I probably should have talked about with Paul, but for some reason we just didn't get to it. Probably because we were just too ready to talk about his pitcher ranks, and then some that have happened over the weekend. So let's start with some of the older moves, and we'll start with Mike Soroka going to the Nationals on a 1-year deal. Any interest in Soroka? I mean, it's been a while since he has been relevant for fantasy, but a lot of that has to do with injury. He should be fully healthy. Has a kind of a prove-it deal with the Nats. Any interest there?
Yeah, the funny thing overall, before we dive into that, is really the this has been a very busy week overall, and historically it isn't, because I had made a comment on Blue Sky and was like, hey, I wonder if this is going to be a week of moves, and somebody's like, I just took a look at this. Like, historically, it is very quiet the week before Christmas, and then boom, we've had a lot of activity here. But like for Soroka's point, I'm interested as long as he's not in the rotation. So it's like you look at what really puts. I was curious about where Soroka was going to end because of the article Mike Petriello wrote just over a month ago. And he's like, this 0-10 pitcher could be a hot free agent. And he talked about, he went over some things and how his numbers, like, he really exploded as a reliever last year because the velocity played up and he basically became fastball slider, struck out 13 straight guys at one point. The numbers were great out of the rotation. He basically scrapped his 2 bad pitches, focused on his 2 good ones. And how many times have we seen that particular success story play out? So I'm curious, I see a roster resource. They've got Soroka into the rotation. I don't know if that was part of that's why I'm going to sign with the Nationals, because I want to pitch as a starter. I don't know the background on that, but I'm honestly not as thrilled about Soroka if he's going to pitch out of the rotation after watching what he was doing out of the bullpen, the way the stuff was playing up. So, again, I want to see where he's going to go. If he's in that bullpen situation is kind of wide open. Open. Look at some of those names. In fact, without looking over that chart, Justin, I want you to name 2 names out of the Washington Nationals bullpen right now. 2.
Well, I know that they have Robert Garcia.
Right, that's 1.
And I know they have Jonah Dawn.
All right, that's 2. there you go. So that's 1 more than I would have been able to name.
They have Derek Law.
There's three. So yeah, that's the rest of it. It's like, I mean, Zach Brisky. I can't even probably never pronounce that name right. But if you think that the only name I actually recognize is Joe LaSorsa, because the Rays used him for one game or two. So it is, if you think this is bad, go look at the Marlins situation. So it's one of these crazy things where I would love to see Soroka in this bullpen and just going eating over there. Maybe he can turn himself into a closer. Obviously, the health has been a major issue for him throughout his career with that. So too long didn't listen. I'm interested if he goes to the bullpen. I'm not as interested as a starter.
Yeah, I mean, this feels like a really low-end starter contract that you can shift to the bullpen, but I think they're going to give him an opportunity to start, at least coming into spring training. So I don't have a ton of interest in Soroka from, as a starter. I think I'm more in line with you where, I really enjoyed watching kind of that stuff playing up in the bullpen in the short stints last year. And it was the first time we've ever seen him get over a strikeout an inning as a pitcher in the major leagues. Now, he did have some control issues and some command issues, but he was able to kind of limit those a little bit more pitching, in these short stints. As a starter over his career, Soroka has I think it's like a sub 20% strikeout rate. So
correct.
I don't have a ton of interest in him as a starter outside of maybe as a last pick in a DC type thing, or one of your last starters in a DC. But as a reliever, he could be interesting because, like you said, like this bullpen is a bunch of guys that you've never heard of, which means he could find himself as a closer if he pitches well. So I would be much more interested in Soroka as a starter, or as a reliever. I just don't know that they're going to give him. I think they're going to give him the opportunity to start.
Well, like my favorite piece out of Petriella's piece is 2024 highest reliever strikeout percentage, minimum 150 batters faced as a reliever. Only Mason Miller was higher than Soroka. That's it. Yeah. That's the list. It's Mason Miller, Soroka, and then Edwin Diaz by a tenth of a decimal point. Below that, Josh Hader, Jeremiah Estrada, another turnaround success story last year, and then Aroldis Chapman. So it's the successful path forward is right there. Just try this. Go do more of this. Even if that strikeout rate would have dropped 20%, it would still be about 30%, which is something he's never been able to do, even come close to as a starting pitcher. So to me, let's go forward like this. But if he wants to be a starter, let him try. You got $9 million for next year. It's not it works either way. It works in the rotation. It works in the bullpen. It works as a tradable commodity if the Nationals are what they expect us to, or what we expect them to be. It works as a tradable deal as well.
Yeah. Let's move over in the division and talk about Max Kepler, who signed a 1 year, I think $10 million deal to go to the Phillies. I love Max Kepler. Anybody who's ever listened to the show knows how much I just love watching Max Kepler play. I've always felt like there's a breakout coming. The problem is he ends up just platooning. Even though he's a great defensive player, he just ends up not going in against left-handed pitching. Where are you at on Max Kepler? Do you think that this could be the spark that sets Kepler ablaze, or is he just kind of doomed to be the guy he's always been, which is a pretty decent strong side platoon bat?
Yeah, you and Ian Kahn both. Ian's always loved Max Kepler as well. I look at this as the club deepening their bench. I'm a little concerned. Like right now, Roster Resource has him as the strong side platoon as left field. You and I have played as many games in left field as Max Kepler has in his career. 0. So it's a little weird.
But he's such a good defender that I'm not super worried about that.
It's a little weird for a guy that's been in the majors for parts of seasons since 2016 to have 0 games played in left field. But obviously the ballpark is a nice situation for him. The lineup where he is going to be a good situation. I just don't see him getting upper half of the lineup exposure unless injuries happen. I mean, that top 4 is locked solid. The only thing, like maybe he can move up and hit 5th. So there's some right, left situation going on, because right now it's left, and then it's right, and then him is the way the depth chart plays out. So we'll see how that particular bit of it plays out. But overall, yeah, I like this. My original thought was perhaps they could use him as leadoff and move Schwarber down a little bit. But then I dug into the numbers, and honestly, it doesn't really play out. It gives them an option. But if you look at look at outcomes the past few years, Schwarber's the better fit. He gets on base more. If that's what your goal is, to get somebody on base more, Schwarber's still the best guy for this job. But Kepler could be that guy. And then if you move Schwarber down, I mean, if you just put Kepler, I don't know how you with 3 lefties though, with Schwarber, Harper.
I don't think you can.
Yeah, it's just kind of, that's where it shakes out. So this is, I think he's a lower half. I feel he's a lower half lineup guy that's going to be in there on the strong side of things, and we'll see how it plays out defensively for him. But I mean, honestly, it could have been much worse than Castellanos. So
yeah, I mean, I think he is definitely an improvement in terms of, the defensive outfield, which seems to be a little bit of a priority for these Phillies after putting so many guys in that outfield that have been, defensive liabilities, right? Castellanos has tried to work on that defense. It hasn't, he's had moments where it's looked good, and then obviously moments where it has not. Schwarber obviously doesn't play the field anymore. I like the part change. Like, this is a good part change for Kepler. And I do think that his defense will keep him in there more often than not. I just, he is he's got a career. He's a career guy who has struggled against left-handed pitching for his career. He's hit 221 against lefties. And I don't know that enough is going to change in that regard for him to become a full-time player and be able to really take advantage of that smaller ballpark. That being said, in deeper leagues, I still love Max Kepler, and I'll still, stream him in and out of my lineup when I know that the Phillies are going up against, a weekend of right-handed pitchers.
Just curious to see what else happens there. I mean, we've seen enough smoke for Alec Bohm trade talks.
Yeah,
what's happening? They've already said that they want to throttle back how much Real Muto catches this year. And I don't know if that's necessarily going to be like, all right, we're going to Garrett Stubbs some more time. Yeah, I don't know if this lineup's done yet. So it could be Kepler could move up a spot, but as we were saying, when you already have what you have at the top, I don't see him cracking that unless one of those guys gets hurt. Yeah,
absolutely. Then let's stay with the Phillies and a move that literally just happened, I think, about an hour ago. Jesus Luzardo traded to the Phillies. Luzardo has been kind of one of his, he's just been a tease of a fantasy player over the course of his career. He shows amazing stuff when he's healthy and on the mound. But then at times he loses command or control or he gets hurt. Are you still in on Jesus Luzardo?
Yeah, I was having this little back and forth with one of my best friends this morning. He's a huge Phillies fan. He's super excited about this. And he was like, you're not going to quell my excitement for this. I look at it as just like you did, tease. He has pitched a triple-digit inning number twice in his career, and the second time it was barely 100.1. He has had one full season of pitching, and then last year the forearm, the lumbar soreness back there. I saw Eno mention that Jeff Zimmerman has Luzardo in the 73rd percentile for injury risk. He's right there with Bobby Miller, and I was like, I think both of these teams went into this trade believing that the pitcher is going to get hurt. And so like the Phillies weren't they, I mean, I've saw some of the reactions to what was given up. Like Chris Clegg said, he's got a lot of the pitcher Sosa, not the shortstop. I forget the exact name in the deal, but I was looking at something Chris had said, and I want to pull it up now because when he said something along his lines, but he was basically that the prospect had a potential 70 grade, and that was very interesting. But it's way off. And so And the Marlins were like, let's sell high while Luzardo is still in one piece, I guess. So I look at this as we expect the guy to get hurt, but it's something Philly, as you mentioned, they're putting an emphasis on deepening their rotation, and it's kind of crazy that Luzardo was now like he's joining this, and he's probably going to be the fifth starter out of this. But it does give them a lot of depth with this, and we'll see. I know the approach lately has been all the offense that they've had, but you can never have too much pitching. And in this case, even if Luzardo gets hurt, this is still a nice depth to have. And it's, as Philly fans are probably screaming while listening to this, and it's not Taijuan Walker. So that's the improvement, is this isn't Taijuan Walker anymore.
I mean, I think from the Phillies perspective, this gives Andrew Painter more time to kind of rehab and kind of build up his innings in the minor leagues before they bring him up for that fifth rotation spot, right? And this is a huge depth move, and maybe they get lucky, and Luzardo is the guy that he's shown flashes of before. I mean, in 2023, through 178 and 2/3 with 3.58 ERA and 208 strikeouts, while keeping the walks in check, not giving up too many home runs. I do worry about the park move in terms of those home runs. You're going from that cavernous ballpark in Miami to a very, very small ballpark in Philadelphia. I also worry about his health. Like you mentioned, he's only gone over the 100-inning threshold twice in his career. At this point, we're talking about pretty much a 5-season career in which, he has not been able to throw a ton of innings. That being said, was this a pretty good return for Miami? They get Emeron Boyd, who is a high A prospect that's got quite a bit of speed and a pretty decent hit tool. And then the headliner of the return is Starlin Kaba, who is a top 100 prospect, 71st prospect on Fangraphs board. He's got a great hit tool, a lot of speed, and a fantastic defensive player at shortstop. I don't know what he'll be for fantasy necessarily, but if he's such a good defensive player, he's got a lot of speed and good hit tool, maybe high average, and a lot of stolen bases. But as far as Luzardo goes this year, the nice thing about Luzardo is, at least in fantasy, he is virtually free, right? And I know people hate when people use that phrase, but he's going at pick 445 right now. That is pretty damn close to free.
Well, so I'm looking at Draft Champions. I did Draft Champion just because all the different drafts out there. So even in the 40 Draft Champions, he's going 333.
Okay. All right. And he's going high on Draft Champions. Yeah.
So he is. So the three guys in front of him, Jameson Taillon, Nick Martinez, Aaron Savali, and the guys behind him, starters, Matthew Boyd, Chris Bassett, and David Peterson. Now, to me, out of that group, Nick Martinez, I liked him a lot coming into last year. That paid off well. To me, of that group, I would rather take my chances with Boyd of that 6, but that's kind of the group that he's in. And then if you want to go the volume game, which you and Paul talked about the volume game on the podcast you guys recorded Friday. I thought you made a great point on that. It's like there's value in volume. Whereas, it's like go chasing the upside and maybe this is a good example, chasing the upside of Luzardo, where but Bassett's sitting right there. And, I have my concerns about Bassett and the clients, but there's value in volume. And I think you and I would both agree that Bassett is likely to throw 40 to 50 more innings than Luzardo this year.
Yeah. I mean, the chance that Luzardo throws even 70 or within 70 innings of Bassett is small, right? We're talking about a guy in Luzardo who only threw 66 and 2/3 last year. So here's the thing for me, when you get to this point in the draft, let's say we are talking about around pick 350, right? It's really about what you have already done in the draft. Indeed. If you've already gotten a bunch of those innings eater types that you feel really confident you're going to get a lot of innings from, and maybe you need some upside, Luzardo fits the bill there. But I think more often than not, people have taken some upside already and they really need a stabilizing piece in the rotation. And a guy like Bassett makes a ton more sense in that scenario. And the problem is what people end up doing is they pass on Bassett for a guy like Luzardo when they already have risk in the rotation, and now they just compounded that risk, right? And you don't want to compound the risk, right? You want to take risk, but you want it to be calculated, and you want it to be surrounded by stabilizing guys that are going to give you a pretty high floor. So I'm not a big Luzardo guy. I've never been a big Luzardo guy. I think this price, even at pick 350 in Draft Champions, is pretty fair. And so I wouldn't mind taking a gamble or two, but I can't imagine he's going to end up on a lot of my teams.
I feel the same way.
Gio Urshela, such a lackluster signing in Sacramento. Urshela goes to the Sacramento Athletics, or just the Athletics as they like to be called. He's probably going to man third base there. Any interest in deeper formats for Gio Urshela?
So before we get to that, you and Paul talked about this on Friday too. And since you guys are both on the masthead, go take that ATH and make it SAC on roster resource. And then it's right where Oakland used to be. I am tired of having to go there and looking like ATH. Just move it. I digress. Yes, interest in Urshela because he falls into my favorite type of player. Volume player on a bad team that doesn't have much to challenge him. So it's like, and I will ride that until it either looks terrible or if it works out great. But the fact that he is on this team pretty much means he's going to play as long as he can hold up. And there's, again, value and volume. As a mixed leaguer, no. In mixed leaguer, I'm thinking reserves. But AL only, yeah, he's going to start. And it's going to be low in the lineup. There's not a lot of sexiness to it. But again, value and volume, and that's where he could play. And if the power, I think it's Power Field in Sacramento works out well, it's better than what he had in Detroit for situations. So yeah, this is I like these types of signings. These players tend to fill out my roster at the end of the game. And Lord knows Urshela has moved around the field a little bit, so possibly he picks up some in-season flexibility for you AL only folks as well. He played short 18 games at first, 1 game at short, and most of it at third base. But I think I feel there's some upside here in AL only format.
Yeah, I think in AL only or Draft Champions, he makes a lot of sense, right? Because he'll probably get 500 plus plate appearances. He's a really good defender. They don't have much there in Oakland. He honestly could approach like 600 plus. Plate appearances, as long as he's healthy, because he's such a good defender on the hot corner that he makes the team around him better. So I could definitely see him. This is actually a really interesting, good signing for the A's. For fantasy, it's pretty boring outside of these deeper formats that Jason and I are referencing. But I often, again, especially in Draft Champions, and we also see this a ton in AL only, right? Guys tend to try to go for those home run shots towards the end. Like, hey, I'm going to put $1 or $2 on this guy because I think he could just break out. And they leave these 500 plate appearance, guys who are just, they're not going to do a ton. Or Urshela may hit 12 home runs, in 500 plus plate appearances. But he's going to play every day. And I mean, you remember what the Wire looked like, halfway through the season in Tout Wars and Labor and those AL onlys, and they were barren. I mean, I heard it from everybody who was in that league, like just how barren those wires were. And to get a guy like Urshela, who you could pretty much just pencil in at third base for the entire season, is pretty valuable. And in spite of the fact that his monetary value may come out to $1 or $2, I think just giving yourself the stability, like that stability cost, is worth a few more bucks. So I like Urshela in those deeper leagues. Obviously, in your 10s, 12s, and 15s, he's not even going to register. He'll just be a guy you pick up off the wire if you need someone because they've got a good home matchup or something like that, or they're traveling to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
All right. One of the bigger signings was Christian Walker. Being signed by the Houston Astros. This literally happened, I think, an hour after we were done recording on Friday again. So, and I think we had a whole discussion on Christian Walker on the podcast. So this is a pretty good fit for Walker and a great fit for the Astros, obviously. Where are you at on Christian Walker now that he's in Houston?
2025, like I've saw some people saying they've done Jose Abreu again. Christian Walker, by the end of this is only a 3-year deal. So by the end of it, it may not be pretty. But right now, this is exactly what the club, if they were moving on from Alex Bregman, if they truly have a we don't go beyond 6 years or we don't go beyond, like, the largest free agent contract that the Astros have ever signed was $150 million. I saw, Rasball had put something out and said, here are the biggest contracts by club. And, the Astros were a bottom 5, which blows my mind considering they're a top 5 media market. But this is where they're at. So if they're moving on from Bregman, then you look at what was left, and it was either make a deal for somebody or lean into this whole we're just going to attack the Crawford boxes angle, and go get another right-handed bat. And this was what they decided to do rather than give up, because I don't know what else they have left to give up out of the farm. They've made a lot of moves and lost a lot of draft picks. So it's like, go do this. And this is what they've done. So we talked about this last week, how I had concerns about Alvarez with the Tucker deal, with Tucker coming out of that lineup. But now, this pull heavy approach of Paredes and Walker around Alvarez could be fun to watch, and it could also blow up in their face. But I do feel better about this lineup situation than I did after the Tucker deal with it.
Yeah, I mean, I understand people making the Jose Abreu comps, and yes, maybe the last year of the deal doesn't age super well necessarily, but I mean, Walker has just been a really, really consistent hitter over the last 3 seasons.
Yeah, he would have hit 30 home runs again if it wasn't for the time he missed last year.
Yeah.
But again, the same thing could have been said about Abreu. That was Abreu's story. The volume, the consistency.
But we could see, if you looked at Abreu's underlying numbers, coming into that deal, you could see the decline. The decline was happening. The bat speed was slowing down. The end zone contact numbers were dropping. It just was shocking to see him fall off the cliff in the way that he did, right? Where it was like he signed that deal and then all of a sudden, all the talent ran out of his body. Yeah. But ultimately, I think Walker's going to be fine. I think he's going to be kind of who he is, which is a high 20s, low 30s homer guy, especially in that park. And he's going to rack up a ton of runs and RBIs because of that. And I really like Christian Walker. Now,
I feel a lot better about penciling in 30 homers and 100 RBIs.
Yeah,
with him in Houston.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I can see that. I'll be interested to see where his price goes. He's currently going at pick 106 in Draft Champions right now as the 8th first baseman off the board. That's probably going to go up, but we're going to talk about a guy here shortly, and maybe I'll move Josh Naylor kind of up a little bit.
Let's just talk about him now.
Yeah, so that way we can kind of just pivot straight to that. Josh Naylor is right above him, and so if both Walker and Naylor go up in the ADP, you're kind of starting up, or you're kind of pushing up a lower tier into this upper tier. Where are you at on Josh Naylor after this trade? Because Cleveland just did some stuff, right? Cleveland, and we're going to talk about kind of the fallout pieces here too. But let's start with Josh Naylor going to Arizona in a deal for Slade Ciccone, and I think a draft pick.
Yeah.
Does this move help Josh Naylor? Does it hurt Josh Naylor? Or does it kind of? For me, it feels very. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it moves the needle a ton for me one way or another with Naylor.
I mean, it's a final year kind of thing. I mean, park-wise, I don't think it moves the needle at all. Because let's remember, Cleveland, what they did physically to that stadium, or structurally, really helped left-handed power. And so it helped him. But I remember, because I had Naylor on a couple of teams last year, the struggles he got hot early and then progressively just kept getting there. It was able to volume his way to some stuff at the end. And that's really where you're leaning on it now, because if you have a fully healthy Corbin Carroll at the top of that lineup, and if Kettle Marte is fully healthy, Josh Naylor's in a really good spot to volume his way to RBIs. Just in an excellent spot to be able to do that, but that's what you're banking on. And so if you get the perfect storm of second half, Josh Naylor is the new reality, and those two guys in front of him get hurt, then this could really blow up in a hurry. So that's where I have, because like you said, first base wise, after him, you Walker, Steer, Cassis, Pascatino, Bellinger, Berger. So first base doesn't have as much depth as we're used to, and there's a lot of question marks, especially with Perez being one of those guys. He's sixth first base. But take that off. You got the top five, and then you kind of got everywhere else you can throw the cards up and let it land on the table. So if you're going to take a chance, Naylor, with the motivations of contract year and the guys in front of him, if everything goes well, this could go really well, but this could also go really poorly as well. But given where this position, how it's shaking out right now, I'm willing to go back in on Naylor, even though he hurt me in a couple of leagues last year overall.
I mean, he had a pretty good year last year. I know the batting average wasn't anything to get excited about, but 31 home runs, 6 stolen bases, 243, 320, 456. Like, that's a pretty damn good year from a guy that I think you were drafted around pick, I don't know, 170 or something last year.
He had 9 homers and hit 240 after the break. That's kind of where it fell off. That's where, I mean, he was at 22, hit 246 with 22 homers before the break, and then 9 homers and 240 down the stretch. And I lost 2 leagues down the stretch, and that's where I'm like, I hate Josh Naylor, but that's what I'm looking at. Is that second half fade was harsh.
I mean, I love that he's going to be hitting third in what should be a lineup that produces better than it did last season, right? Like, now there are a lot of injury question marks in that lineup, as you mentioned. I mean, Corbin Carroll has been kind of struggling off and on with injuries or just underperformance throughout his very short MLB career. Kettle Marte is not the bastion of health, but when this lineup is healthy, hitting third in that lineup is going to be really, really fun. I do like Josh Naylor. My only concern is I feel like this ADP is just too high. Like, I think I would much rather have another guy we're going to talk about. Oh wait, actually no, we're not talking about Bellinger today. We already talked. We talked. The trade on Bellinger actually happened while we were on the air. So, like, he's above Bellinger. He's above Vinny P. He's above another guy we are going to talk about this list. We might as well again just move up. Well, actually, we'll talk about Carlos Santana next. But Paul Goldschmidt going to the Yankees is really interesting. I just don't know if I love the price. First base isn't very deep, there are interesting names as the ADP continues to kind of go down. And I think I'd rather take some gambles there and, maybe get, an SP 2 or 3 at that pick 100 spot, or which is now going to be closer to pick, 80 when the ADP kind of settles itself after this trade. So I don't mind Josh Naylor at the price. I just don't know that I'm going to be getting a lot of him. He's definitely not a target for me.
Fair enough. I mean, I'm just, the other side of this is, what's Cleveland doing?
I mean, I think there's saving money. I think they know that they weren't going to get Josh Naylor done on a long-term deal, whether because he wants to test free agency or they just don't want to give him that long-term deal. And they've got Manzardo in tow, and now they can bring in a cheap Carlos Santana to kind of DH, I guess. I mean,
how you going to DH the guy that won Gold Glove at first base?
I mean, or maybe they're DH Manzardo.
But I mean, in all seriousness, I'm a little. I mean, I thought Santana could have been an option for the Yankees, and they went the other direction. We'll talk about in a minute. But the bringing Santana back to Cleveland is nice. I mean, defensively, he truly was really good last year for Minnesota. Jokes about Gold Glove aside, but he truly was good, and that's an area that Naylor wasn't. So it's like maybe that's their upgrade here. It's just, I think when I look at this about the fantasy perspective of this, if, like I said, I don't know what they think of Manzardo. but adding Santana kind of tells me what they're not fully bought in yet with everything. And so how do they make this play out? Because Cleveland, that was, one of the things we've always looked at with Cleveland is they struggle to score runs. And then last year they're scoring runs. And now they took away a big contributing piece to that and said, let's give it to an older guy. So they either believe that Santana's got more left in the tank than the numbers say he does, or Manzardo is ready to take that step forward, or Big Christmas is ready. But they're asking a lot for those two younger guys, and Manzardo and Noel, to take that step forward because, again, scoring runs has been a problem for this team for a long time. They finally got good at it, and now they took away a piece of it, and they're rebuilding it. And it's weird, and it would be unfortunate, with not like they have the great pitching staff to get away with this. So they have to score runs to win. And I'm a little concerned that this lineup is their best story this year.
Yeah, I don't really know what Cleveland's doing, but they always do weird stuff. Every offseason, Cleveland is doing something weird. And they always seem to just make it work. So like I look at this rotation in Cleveland and I go, all right, I love Tanner Bybee. But after Tanner Bybee, it goes Ben Lively, who is 33 years old. And
do not be smart, UCF's greatest pitcher.
Yeah,
don't you
and
dare.
One of those boring pitchers in baseball. You've got Gavin Williams and Tristan McKenzie, who both feel like they're one pitch away from.
Who may have just gotten hurt.
Ending their season. And then they just traded for Luis Ortiz. So I've always liked Luis Ortiz, but he's one of the most inconsistent pitchers we've seen over the course of the last few seasons. This is a really, really gross rotation. I don't know if there's any other way to put it.
Oh, the other piece, and it's the rotation is not great, and we talked about this during the season. Cleveland's bullpen was worked hard. Well,
with that rotation, you're going to have to work that.
And that's this seems like the perfect confluence of rotation question marks, overworked bullpen that never worked that worked like that, and an offensive retool. Too long didn't listen to Jason. I'm taking the under on whatever the odds are for Cleveland this year. Mm-hmm. And I know you and Paul, you were like, hey, let's do an over-under game. I think we should do that, by the way.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'm taking the hard under on Cleveland this year, whatever it's set at, because they seem prime for a step back this year.
Yeah. For those who want in the over-under pool, in the Discord, I've shared a link to a Google Sheet, and on the second tab are all the pools. And I have three different pool options. For sure, we'll be doing the 13-run pool, which everybody really, really enjoyed last year. But like do an over-under pool, and then maybe try that eliminator pool that I was referencing on that last episode. So
which group is it in, by the way?
I think I threw it in the Listener League channel.
13-run pool. Okay, yeah, I will take. Remind me to get into that, but I absolutely would like to do that. But Cleveland's definitely on my under list this year.
Yeah, I think they'll probably be on my under list too. But as far as Santana goes, again, this is another one of those AL only DC plays, right? I don't think you really want to draft him in a regular 15-team mixed league, but he's gonna play quite a bit. And while the numbers won't always be pretty, that volume at the end of the season will be helpful, kind of filling in the gaps on your DC teams or in your AL only lineup. So
go get yourself a tattoo. Value and volume. Value and volume. Value and volume.
Especially those of you who play in AL only leagues with on base percentage. He is Carlos Santana has never had a season in which he had a walk rate less than 10%.
How about the fact he's never had he's never had a non-COVID season below 500 plate appearances?
Yeah.
Ever.
He just volumes. And we're talking about a guy last 2 seasons. So we're talking about his age, 38 and 37 seasons. He had 594 plate appearances last year. In 2023, he had 619. He's just been a plate appearance monster his entire career. So, and that in that 594 plate appearance season last year, it was, I believe, his second lowest plate appearance season ever if you don't include the COVID 2020 year. Like that's insane, right? So
it is.
All right.
It's a thing to behold, especially since he was a former catcher.
Yep.
I love using him. I love using him in different things of trivia in that manner. It's like, oh yeah, you used to catch. I'm using you.
I remember when they moved him off of catcher, and everybody was like, "Oh man, the days of Carlos Santana fantasy relevancy are now gone," because it's been like over a decade. So, all right, let's finish the first base pool for today and talk about Paul Goldschmidt, who signed a 1-year, $12.5 million deal with the Yankees. This is a pretty interesting fit in New York. I mean, Goldschmidt, yes, had a down season last year, but he was still pretty good for the most part. There are signs, right? There are signs in the underlying numbers, in that bat speed, that things are starting to kind of just age, and he is getting closer and closer to a cliff. Do you think that cliff comes this year, or is this just going to be another solidly productive year for Paul Goldschmidt?
It looked early on last year, it looked like that cliff was already fully here. And then in the second half, like you said, he showed signs of life. But I remember, he was 5th round. Like, the weird thing is, like, everything we've talked about, volume and consistency, old man skills, like all of this applied to Goldschmidt last year. And so we were still taking him where we were taking him. And then it just, I'm looking at just splits, 13 home runs and a 230 batting average. And then it hit 271 the second part of it after the season. So it's like he was able to recover some of it, but obviously it was not anywhere near what we're used to. For him, he still was stealing bases, so there was still some fantasy value there, and he had his volume, but at that volume finally came at a cost. Batting average was never a concern with the guy until it was this past year. So I know that there's been some post-traumatic Rizzo disorder with some of the Yankee fan base, like, oh great, here we want another old dude. But it's like, this was the market. You either go trade for Christian Walker or go sign Christian Walker for a longer deal, or you go get Carlos Santana on a 1-year deal, or Goldschmidt on a 1-year deal, or you make a trade. And to me, this would be the best case scenario here. And go from here. If it'll help his value a little more. I just don't know where he's going to hit in that lineup. That's where it's going to hurt.
Yeah, Roster Resource has him batting 9th right now.
But let's be real. That's because they don't have Stanton on the IL yet. That all it's going to take is a Stanton IL move to make that happen. But given if everybody's 100% healthy, yeah, that's kind of where you put Goldschmidt. Maybe he can hit as high as 7th, but you're not moving anybody out of the top right now. Volpe as a leadoff hitter still cracks me up. They need a legit leadoff hitter. They really do. And I don't know how you address that, but they need a legit leadoff hitter. This should work. But I don't want to pay the price that I had to pay for Goldschmidt last year. And if you look at ADP right now, his ADP is where it should be. 203. He's 16th. He's going just after Michael Toglia.
That feels like a steal.
This is a good, as we talked about the different question marks. Once you get past the top 5, you could put it kind of anybody 6th if you really looked at it through rose-colored glasses. And situation, you try to get one more good year out of Goldschmidt. If he does move up higher in this lineup, that ADP outside the 200 looks great.
Yeah, I know the ADP is going to go up, just because of this signing. But even if it does go up, are we really expecting him to like jump up into like 50 spots? I don't think he's going to jump up, maybe 30. But still, pick 170 feels just like an absolute steal for Paul Goldschmidt. Yes, he had a down season last year, but the end of the season line was 22 home runs, 11 stolen bases, 245, 302, 414. The batting average is definitely not what you expected, but he was better in the second half. Like you said, hit 271 in the second half. The underlying skills did improve as the season went on. I think this is a really good buying opportunity on Paul Goldschmidt. I don't think he's ever going to be the guy that hits 30 home runs and steals, 15, 20 bases again. But like, could he, hit, mid to high 20s homers and steal double-digit bags with like a 270 batting average? I absolutely think he can. And even batting at the bottom of that lineup, like, he'll at least like score a fair amount of runs and RBIs, because that lineup is just going to be loaded again. Especially, I think they feel like the team that could get Bregman here. And then they move Jazz over to second, where he played earlier on in his career. I really like Goldschmidt at this price. Like, I just feel like this is a really good buying opportunity. And I just don't imagine that, even with signing in New York, that the price is going to go up prohibitively. So
yeah, the Bregman Alonso markets are rapidly becoming narrowed. Just let Alonso come to Tampa for 1 year and be like, hey, we don't know where we're going to play next year, and you don't either. So just come home for a year, mash, and then try this again next year.
I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think that Alonso is going to get like a Cody Bellinger type deal, right? Where it's a 3-year deal with opt-outs every year, or for the first two seasons.
Like I said, let him come home, enjoy the tax benefits of Florida, try that out, and
that's one of the guys I think the Giants should go sign. But I think he's just going to end up back in New York.
He doesn't want to do that. He doesn't want to go take his power in San Francisco.
His power plays anywhere. His power is not.
Tell that to Jorge Soler.
The power wasn't the problem with Jorge Soler. It was making contact in San Francisco. So, but I think Alonso is going to end up back in New York with the Mets. I can't imagine he ends up anywhere else. Bregman, I think that one's a little bit more open. I think he could end up in a bunch of different places. All right, let's finish out with Patrick Sandoval, who he's going to be missing at least the first half of the season with recovering from Tommy John surgery. But this is one of those, hey, we're going to give you a 2-year deal because we really want the second year of that deal. Going to Boston to pitch for the Red Sox. You're obviously not drafting Sandoval for this year, but what do you think about the fit long term, mostly for next year in Boston for Patrick Sandoval?
I don't like this at all, and I don't understand what Boston's doing, but as a known Boston hater, I love it. In all seriousness with this one, it's like this year's a wash. Whatever he does, he does. And so 18 million for 2026 is just like, what are you doing? And when you look at, so you and Paul touched a bit on this Friday about the recovery time from the internal brace. So Sandoval had the internal brace in June 26. I'm looking at Joe Rogaley's list. June 26, 2024 is when he had that procedure. And you mentioned you couldn't remember who the guy that had the most innings coming off of that particular surgery. And when I went back and looked at it, it was Brian Wu. When Brian Wu had he had his surgery on April 1st of 21, and then he came back and pitched his first game in June 6th of 20, and he did like 60 innings that year. And so again, you take Sandoval's, the internal brace does lower the return to the mound, but again, how much is he going to do? So I don't think Sandoval has any 2025 fantasy value at all. If you're in a keeper league, you're trying to be like, okay, cool, I'll use one of my last picks and IL stash him in my keeper league. I don't know if I want him in 2026 either, because of the ballpark fit. I just don't understand why they did this move. Maybe there's something in their pitch lab, and they're like, look, we can make a tweak that the Angels aren't doing, or never did, and we can get more out of Sandoval. I don't like this at all, and I don't think he has any fantasy relevancy for 2025. If I'm completely wrong, come back and play this clip later and be like, you're an idiot. I just don't see this as a value. I just don't get it from him, but good for him. He got paid.
Yeah, good for him for getting paid. Yeah, I don't see this working out, especially for 2025. Like, I mean, there's not a format outside of like a deep AL only league where you can throw a buck on him and maybe have him for a buck coming into 2026. Especially if you've got like unlimited IL spots, right? But for any sort of mixed league, and any sort of redraft league, like, I just don't see any relevance for 2025. 2026, I mean, I trust in Brandon Bailey. You know, like I really do.
Andrew.
Sorry, Andrew. Wow, Brandon. Yeah, Andrew Bailey. I trust in Andrew Bailey as a pitching coach. I think he is a fantastic pitching coach. What he did in San Francisco as in his time there, and then what he's done in Boston so far, his time there. I just think he is a really, really good pitching coach. So I might be interested as a kind of end game, gamble next season. But for 2025, I just see very little value in Patrick Sandoval at this point.
I mean, I like Sandoval pre-injury. I've always taken a chance. You've seen some good stuff, but coming off the injury, coming off the surgery, going to Fenway. No.
Yeah, I agree. All right, that's going to wrap us up for this episode. Hopefully, we'll have a bunch more moves to talk about next week, or we'll just jump into a new topic. But Jason, want to remind everybody where you can reach on social media and then plug anything you got going on.
Yeah, find me at Blue Sky. And I did start the bold prediction series, so I'm wrapping up the AL East today. And so names I have included this year for the hitters: Jordan Westberg, who I honestly believe has a chance to be the best second baseman fantasy value by the season's end. That's the bold prediction, and I explain why. I've got Christian Campbell, Austin Wells, Jonathan Aranda, and Stuart Baroa for the hitters out of the AL East. And pitchers, I did the entirety of the Baltimore bullpen because I can't make up my mind about one of these. So I'm like, you know what? This bullpen situation needs to be discussed. Cutter Crawford, Clayton Beater, Drew Rasmussen, and Kevin Gossman. And the Kevin Gossman one is honestly influenced by the TikTok that Nick Pollock and Paul Sporer did in the car driving to or from the winter meetings. I saw that. I was like, Kevin Gossman's a perfect guy to talk about because even in there, the two of them differed on what they wanted to do. But I have my own opinions of Kevin Gossman. But once I saw those two talking about it, I'm like, that's the guy I'm going to settle on and talk about him. So those are the guys that I'm writing up. And then that'll be each of the next 6 weeks. There will be a division covered, and AL East is first. I alternate every year. It's NL. I usually go East or West. I forget, but this year starting with the AL East, not because I'm being a homer. It's just because that's how I started the order with everything. So that's happening, and ready for Christmas. My daughter's got to wrap all the presents that I bought for my wife. So I don't do my own wrapping. I don't. I just have I'm like, please go take care of that. And enjoying a week off of work. I have the week off. And so if you guys decide to record or anything, I'm available because I don't have to go to work again until December 30th.
Beautiful. You can reach me on all social media platforms, just Mason FWFB. Really close to hitting 1,000 subscribers on YouTube. So if you're not subscribed on the YouTube, you can also catch all of these podcasts in YouTube format over on that YouTube. So go follow me over there, as well as all the other places you track people on social media. Currently, I am working on projections. I'm going to be starting my ADP movement piece here pretty darn soon, maybe even tonight. We'll see. I may just wait until the end of the year so I can have it, start fresh on the first. But I don't know what I'm going to write about tonight, so I may just load that one up. And then I'm writing over at Fantasy Pros. They're going to be kicking off their MLB coverage here next month. So lots of good stuff and content coming from me. For Jason myself, thank you for listening. Have fantastic baseball off season.
Happy holidays.